From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
A new use for an old farm.
It is a special day when you can kind of expose the roots of our 4-H program.
How this farm in Tennessee is helping kids in the technical fields while surrounded by nature. As planting progress continues to move at a snail's pace here at home.
I'm Michelle Rook. It has been a slow start to the planting season, and that's true here in South Dakota. I'll head to the fields today on Ag Day.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Rainy and cool conditions are continuing to push planting back last week. But things are starting to pick up. USDA reporting in its latest crop progress report that 22% of the corn crop is now in the ground. That's well off the 5-year average, but up 8% from last week. States like Michigan, Minnesota, North Dakota, and Wisconsin really far behind right now. As for soybeans, 12% of the crop is planted. That's 12% behind average. The crop was 8% planted last week. Minnesota, just 2% planted, and Ohio has nothing in the ground. When it comes to soybeans right now, South Dakota sits at 5%. But this week could bring improved conditions, including in South Dakota. As Michelle Rook reports, things are finally starting to warm up for farmers.
Clinton, the planters are finally starting to roll here in South Dakota, but it has been a slow start, especially compared to the record pace set last spring. In the southeast, April was a bust for planting as farmers were waiting for warmer soil temperatures.
Last year we were about 10 degrees warmer, I feel like, median temperature day and night. We're not there yet.
And last spring, Nelson had the majority of his corn and soybeans seeded by now.
Last year I was half done with corn and I was on the home stretch of beans already. It was done the 1st of May with both.
The other concern has been drought, as 2021 was the driest growing season in the state in 100 years.
I think we had somewhere around 3.5 inches for our season right in here. And it was tough, and we're definitely behind on moisture.
Tim Ostrom also started planting into dry soils. He says they've had some rain, but will need much more with the dry subsoil.
This was a drought area last year, and I'm also concerned about what long-range forecasts have been. So far, they're saying that it's not really changed.
Still, he remains optimistic about yield prospects.
I'm fully expecting my yields, provided we don't have a drought this summer, to be just fine. And I'm still planning my maturity.
It's a stark contrast in northeast South Dakota as farmers are parked, waiting for soils to warm up and dry out.
Soil temps are in the low 30s and not a lot of sunny days, and forecast has more rain in it, so not a lot going on at all around here.
Chad Schooley farms not far from Hanton and has made some progress, but nothing like 2021.
I think that first couple days of May we were wrapping up, other than a few wet spots.
Schooley says he's not concerned about the late start yet.
We can put a lot of crop in the ground in a short period of time with the equipment that we run these days.
But Hanton says if the weather doesn't cooperate soon, yields will be compromised.
We're getting to where yields may start to get reduced because of late planting, and always the earlier we get it in, the better crop we generally have.
And it's a year farmers need bumper yields with historically tight global supplies. In South Dakota, I'm Michelle Rook reporting for Ag Day.
And that planting situation could be changing this week with better weather in the Midwest. Meteorologist Maggie Rasavik joins us with the very latest.
Yeah, Clinton, we've got more fire danger out there in the Southwest. It's been very dry and again going to be very windy, hot, and not as humid. Very dry air in place. Here's a look at the drought monitor. As you can see, still extreme to exceptional drought conditions in Texas, most of New Mexico, and even Arizona in that moderate to severe dry category. That's going to continue with not a lot of rain expected anywhere in New Mexico or into Arizona. And you can see those winds, especially near Flagstaff, over towards Santa Fe and Albuquerque, even down toward Tucson, dealing with winds that could be gusting upwards of 30 to 40 plus miles per hour, especially in some of those higher elevations. And that's why there is a critical fire risk from Flagstaff over toward Albuquerque, most of northern parts of New Mexico, and northeastern portions of Arizona in that critical fire danger, but an area very dry and very elevated with that fire risk for today. And it's because of this pattern. The winds out in the southwest, because of that jet stream, very hot and humid though in the east. And we're going to talk more about that coming up here in just a little bit. And LaVille Junior Senior High School in Indiana recently held its annual AgDay event. They welcomed over 500 elementary students from around the area to check out animals and equipment on display from local farms and businesses. A great way to get kids learning about life on the farm and future careers in ag. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
The EPA has started its roundtable discussions on a new definition of the Waters of the U.S. rule. The agency hosting a Midwest-focused virtual roundtable on Monday. This is one of 10 such roundtables that will focus on different sections of the U.S. and involve conservation groups, developers, drinking water and wastewater managers, along with environmental organizations and agriculture. Now, one expert on the Midwest panel bringing up concerns about increased farm runoff due to climate issues, bringing about more rainfall.
At the same time as it's hard for farmers to plant their crop in the spring because of wet soils and hard for them to harvest their crop in the fall because of wet soils, it becomes even harder for them to empty these large confined animal feeding operation manure holding facilities. After the crop is harvested, the manure is applied to the land. In a very wet, leaky system, very little of that manure-based nitrogen remains available for the crop the following year. Likewise, in the spring, additional manure is applied to the land. We need to put a moratorium on the fall application of liquid-based animal manure and hydrous ammonia in the fall because it simply doesn't persist to serve the crop the following year.
In December, the EPA formally published its proposed rule to revert the Waters of the U.S. definition mostly to those pre-2015 rules as it seeks to develop a new definition. The American Farm Bureau Federation saying the proposal from EPA would significantly expand the landmass regulated by the government and lead to a costly labyrinth of permit requirements. Two iconic brands are coming together to honor farmers and raise money to aid family farms. John Deere is joining forces with Anheuser-Busch to bring limited edition For the Farmers cans across the country. Now, those cans feature that iconic green tractor and farm scenes. They will be available starting next week through July 3rd. For each case sold, Busch Light will donate $1 to Farm Rescue, up to a maximum of $100,000, with John Deere matching Busch Light's donation. Farm Rescue helps farm and ranch families that have experienced a major injury, illness, or natural disaster. We'll talk planting progress and what this week's improved forecast means for markets coming up next. And later, summer camp is perfect for learning and making magical memories. We'll check on progress at a Tennessee farm preparing to teach campers about science and agriculture in the country.
Find farm equipment on Machinery Pete's May 17th online auction. No reserve, no buyer fees. Start bidding now at auctions.machinerypete.com.
There's been another ransomware attack on ag, this time targeting Agco. The company announcing the attack occurred on Thursday, May 5th. The worldwide manufacturer and distributor of ag equipment saying it impacted some of its production facilities. Agco adds it is still investigating the extent of the attack, but anticipated its business operations would be adversely affected for several days and potentially longer. Now, it says it would all depend on how quickly it's able to repair its systems. Last month, the FBI warned farmers and ag cooperatives needed to be on high alert this spring, saying cyber criminals might attack during planting and harvesting seasons. We're joined today by Steve Georgie with Allendale Incorporated as we talk about planting pace here. Steve, obviously it's been pretty slow to get started across much of the Midwest with this cool, wet weather, but that could change soon.
Yeah, and it is. You look at all the, as you mentioned, the wet weather, all the rain. I mean, you get on Twitter, you see the pictures, right? You see a lot of these fields that are wet right now. And the planting pace that we have seen throughout, the last several weeks, we are behind. We know that. We do need to be, I guess, a little mindful coming up into the next several weeks, though. can things pick up very fast? We know the 80-degree temperatures across the Midwest. That's going to certainly help dry things out. And there is a good open window for most areas over the next week in order for us to really get things done. The American farmer is amazing. By putting the crop in the ground, the speed at which you guys can get that done is absolutely astonishing. And so we've got to be very mindful of that. Things can pick up pretty fast when we have the ability to do it. And I think that we've got that chance over the next couple weeks to really step up planting pace. So I think the markets right now are kind of on edge. Yes, we're behind, but looking forward, we can pick that up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it feels like here over the next couple of weeks, those are going to be the windows that to see how much of this we can get done. And then you go beyond that and you start to look out into the summer, and of course weather, always a wild card.
Yes, and that's it. We're going to talk planting pace for maybe another couple weeks, and then it's going to be directly to weather. What does the weather look like? What are we doing? Listening to some of these stories and watching some of these forecasters put out their perspective going into summer. Just reading one again today from a pretty reputable forecaster, still looking at this drier bias to come in through summer. Now, not only is there above average temperatures, but we're talking below average precip, and the area in which they were talking prior has now expanded. And so this is something that is going to be watched very, very quickly. And as we talked before about the volatility that we get in these markets, if we start putting in a drought type mentality or just drier bias mentality, these markets could find some spark very, very quickly again. But planting pace, we're going to talk about that for maybe another few weeks. And then we're going to move right into what the summer outlook looks like and what kind of weather we have coming ahead. And we'll probably play that in pretty early this year.
Yeah, a lot of things to try to figure out here in the next month for sure. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for being here. We'll be back with a check of weather coming up in just a minute.
To talk to Steve Georgie one-on-one, call Allendale Incorporated at 800-262-7538 or head online to allendale-inc.com. It's time to sign up for the 2022 United Pork Americas Conference in Orlando, Florida. Register today at unitedporkamericas.com and join us September 7th through the 9th.
Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joining us here, taking a look at our national forecast, and Matt, really severe weather this week as this warm up kind of comes right through the middle of the country.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about a dry line in parts of Texas, firing up some supercells, but also a cold front in parts of the Great Lakes, bringing more strong storms. And you can see those areas highlighted for today down into Texas, parts of Oklahoma as well, along and ahead of a dry line, which could spark up a few supercells, but also up into parts of really the UP of Michigan and eastern portions of Wisconsin, dealing with the threat for a couple of strong storms. Now, if we move this threat into the following day, which is going to be Wednesday, we've got a large area here of storms that could be right along a front out there in the west. Part of that with the dry line, another system though forming up farther to the north. We've got this system off the coast. That's going to really not move at all because high pressure in control to the north and over to the west. So it's not able to come west much, but it's also not moving very quick because the jet stream is well into the western United States right now. Cold front along the north. That's what's going to spark up some of those storms as we head through Tuesday up in portions of Wisconsin and Michigan. There's that dry line as well back to the west. So as we put this into motion, you can really see there's that batch of storms getting going as that surface low moves north. And here's the dry line sparking up some of those supercells in parts of Texas and Oklahoma. You can see those moving through, heading into the overnight hours. Not much going on, though, over most of the country. No big storm systems to talk about, and that is really because everything is very dry, very warm, especially from the Rockies on to the east. That dry line not going anywhere, though. It's going to spark up some more storms as we head towards Wednesday evening and Thursday. Also not expecting a ton of rainfall as we head through this week. Most of it's going to be Up here in the Dakotas, up into the upper Midwest, parts of the Rockies there, and some higher elevation snow as well, but it is going to be hot and humid. 97 in Amarillo. It's not going to cool off all that much because we've got very muggy air all the way up into portions of the Great Lakes. And again, as we head into tomorrow afternoon, very, very warm. Some places in the upper Midwest and the Plain States getting into the mid to upper 90s. And this is why, look at this big ridge building over the eastern United States. Jet stream stays out west. It keeps it active in the west and the northern plains, but it's going to stay warm as we head through this week before a cool down comes for portions of the east. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at the weather where you live. Newberry, Michigan, showers and thunderstorms likely, a high of 68 degrees. Heading to Midland, Texas, mostly sunny, but afternoon and evening severe storms are possible, a high of 94 degrees. And Lakeview, Oregon, rain and snow showers, a high of 44.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com. The Dairy Report on Ag Day is brought to you by Beringer Ingelheim, because cattle first is a remark only made remarkable by you, producers and veterinarians across the country.
The U.S. is experiencing a labor shortage that's partly fueled by a drop-off in immigration, which slowed during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, by some estimates, the U.S. now has 2 million fewer immigrants than it would have if the pace had stayed the same. That's leading to a desperate scramble for workers in many sectors, including farming. Experts say it's also contributing to supply shortages and price increases. The Associated Press talked with one farmer in Texas who operates just 10 miles from the Rio Grande. Mike Helly says he's so short of immigrants, he's replaced hundreds of acres of labor-intensive leafy greens with crops that can be harvested by machinery. He's also increased pay for his workers, who he says are almost exclusively immigrants. Dairy farms are big employers of immigrant labor as well, and the need for workers has the National Milk Producers Federation renewing its call for dairy farms to be given access to the H-2A Ag Guest Worker Visa program. Now, the organization sending a letter to the president asking the White House to issue an executive order to exempt dairy worker positions from H-2A's seasonality restriction. NMPF says the action would help dairy farmers recruit workers, control labor costs, and ease food inflation. It says unlike the rest of ag, the dairy industry is unable to use that H-2A program because of the year-round nature of dairy production. Summer camps are getting ready for kids to arrive. We'll check in on progress at a farm in Tennessee that's preparing to teach kids all about the science of agriculture next. Tennessee 4-H will soon have overnight campers at its new center in West Tennessee as construction moves forward at Lone Oaks Farm. As Charles Denny reports, the center, surrounded by more than 1,000 acres of natural beauty, specializes in STEM education for kids.
The energy and symbolism of future growth. Hardeman County 4-H'ers are planting the final topsoil around a new tree at Lone Oaks Farm. The one the place is named for fell victim to age, disease, and weather. But this day, we're kicking off a summer of fun at West Tennessee's new 4-H and STEM Center. And the centerpiece of the camp, this cherry bark red oak.
One really neat thing about this tree is that some of our researchers in collaboration with Extension grew this tree. So it has a very special meaning for us to be able to put those roots down.
This natural learning environment is getting some man-made help. All around Lone Oaks, construction is coming along. A new STEM education building here, a dining hall, and cabins where some 65 kids can stay overnight, set to open in fall.
Because of COVID, we couldn't do a groundbreaking, and a topping ceremony is a pretty special day when you build barns. It is a special day when you can kind of expose the roots of our 4-H program, of our land grant.
Lone Oaks covers 1,200 acres, beautiful woods, trails, farmland, and 16 bodies of water.
The core mission here is to connect people to this land.
4-Hers are going to come here and begin to envision themselves as possibly scientists or mathematicians or math teachers or computer scientists. And that's a pathway not only to our university, but many, but it's also a pathway to a great future.
As new structures go up, excitement builds at Lone Oaks. The tree should grow tall and powerful. And just like the baby oak, strong roots are taking hold, getting ready to serve future generations. This is Charles Denny reporting.
All right, thanks, Charles. And that's all the time we have this morning. Sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day out on the farm.